maybe let's start with you, Leonard. Just a quick introduction of yourself and the company so that then we gradually get to know everybody. Leonard.
All right, so thank you very much for listening. My name is Leonard Sachsenhauser. I'm one of the founding partners of Coros. Coros is a owner-occupied private equity platform, and all we're doing basically is we invest in cities where we think they offer great potential and we can deliver great workplaces and then ESG compliant product, which for us is very important and our core DNA. We are existing for around about six years now. That's exactly the number of years I'm working with this company as well, and I think it's been a great growth story so far. So we started with 2, now we are over 30 people working across Munich, Berlin and London. Those are our offices right now, and we are further expanding to deliver more great product.
Great, thank you. Anne.
Hi, my name is Anne Zeller from Corestate. I'm heading our product and business development department, focusing on all aspects of deal sourcing, equity sourcing, structuring, and most important these days, ESG and market research. Speaking about Corestate, we are now at 27 billion assets under management as a fully integrated asset manager. However, the important thing is, when we started 15 years ago, we were a small group of, let's say, maybe 15 people, whilst we are now about 800. And we started with the idea of really focusing on, back then, a really new and fancy asset class named micro-living, which of course per today is a very common standardized asset class. However, we were one of the first movers in this segment. A few years later, we bought into a nice Swiss company called HFS, which again was one of the first movers when it comes to mezzanine funds and real estate debt financing. So I think what's important to know about Corestate that we're always trying to figure out what are the most important and most sustainable trends in the real estate business. And we are really trying to figure out what could be the best product for our investors on a, let's say, 10 years looking forward basis. So this is, of course, actually why the question of winning cities and especially for us, the product of city quarters in these winning cities is a very interesting topic for us.
Yeah, and I think that city quarters one is a really interesting topic. We picked that up a little bit earlier in the residential one as well. So it'll be nice to revisit that in the winning cities framework. And Richard.
Yeah, hi, I'm Richard Wilkinson, the CFO, Deputy CEO of CTP. We are primarily a logistics development company, but in one of the top 5 in Europe. But we have in Brno, which is the Silicon Valley of Central Europe, or that's what they like to call themselves, and they're fantastic technical universities there. We have 3 mixed-use developments, so mixture of office, student housing, short-term living, co-working, and research and R&D space. So we have a little bit of experience on the edge of town, but also in the middle of town.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, I think, to see how cities have changed and the requirement for logistics as part of an urban mixed use has really begun to move forward and become an absolute necessity for any of those neighbourhoods or urban living. Now, the COVID-19 crisis has obviously brought a changing role to cities, and especially brought that into sharp focus with the issues around, I suppose, retail and those kinds of things. And from your point of view, I suppose, how do you see that in terms of the challenge that that's created for cities in general the last 18 months? And what do you see as the key things of that? And I suppose, what things do you think will continue to be a challenge for cities, will continue post-COVID?
Well, what we've seen in the last months is that the most important thing for the cities was always to find a very good balance between their economic space, but also looking into things like the overall urban living concept they are focusing on. And that always goes hand in hand with things like sustainability, ESG factors, while we are now more focusing on the social part, because clearly people want to socialize. During COVID, we were not able to do so. And I think people are now much more open and much more clear in what they really want to have for their lives. So we really see there is a need of coexistence of a really good mixture in these city quarters, in this winning city concept. So whenever we see a situation where really the political initiatives plus the economic framework, plus there is also a good starting point for education, is in a good shape and is working together, that is the situation where you can overcome all these critical aspects we are seeing at the moment. So yes, there will clearly be companies that will still suffer and that have suffered from COVID-19 and might not be able to come back to business. But that even shows us that the concepts we have to focus, because COVID-19 might not go away and we do not know what happens in 5 years from now, that we really have to focus on concepts that are long-lasting, that are sustainable. And this sustainability only comes from a good coexistence of all these factors, while maybe 20 years ago we were focusing really on either economics or saying this is just urban residential space, and now we have an overall excitement where we see really there's a combination, and the combination makes it work.
Okay, good. And Leonard, I mean, you obviously mentioned there in the introduction the sort of focus in terms of the investment side, but have you reassessed that at all kind of post-COVID? Has that made you look at things in a different way? Has it changed your investment strategy at all?
I think not so much at all. I think when we started 6 years ago, when I met the first guys working for Chorus, we thought about cities like it all looks a bit outdated sometimes. You know, we went through the cities and we saw great, you know, asset value in this building stock, but what we did not see is too many attractive spaces, you know, for people to work, to live, to play, and to just spend time. And I think that's something that is accompanying us since 2000, let's say 15. And we were always thinking about at Chorus, also with the new generation. I mean, our average age at Chorus is 30. So we see ourselves as the new generation real estate company that always wanted to change the city, that looked a bit like out of the 70s and 80s when, you know, you drove with your car to the office and you went to the underground parking space, you had your own office and somebody knocked on your door when somebody wanted to talk to you. And that's something we always questioned, and I think we always thought about city development. And I can confirm that the city will have to use more or offer more mixed-use schemes, more attractive places, not just skyscrapers, but to work, but also like amenities and things people really enjoy. And that's also something we did, for example, as our first flagship project in Neukölln in Berlin, where we really think it offered a great opportunity in terms of location. You know, it's a very resi area, lots of, you know, social issues as well, and sometimes not the best place to eat and to, you know, go out and to enjoy life. And we developed Alte Post in Neukölln as an urban mixed-use scheme right in the center of Neukölln, and we integrated workplaces. We reused an existing, you know, old listed building to offer restaurant, fitness. We built residential in the background. And we brought in some great new tenants to this area, and it all ended up in a very lively micro area, which is still developing. So I think it focuses even more on the things we always thought they are relevant for everyone.
Okay, good. And Richard, from your perspective, have you? I mean, there was a lot of views that kind of cities would be dying after COVID, in the sense that everybody would move out, that there'd be a huge change in terms of which were the key cities, which were not. Do you think there's going to be that amount of change, or do you think that post-COVID things will kind of return to the same trajectory where they were before? Do you think there's been a step change? How do you see that?
Yes and no. I think the challenge for cities was the same before COVID, as you just said, Thomas, as it is now. And that's to create interesting, diverse, attractive spaces. That monocultures don't work. Yeah? So if you have an office district that's just offices, with the sandwich shops and the restaurants and the cafes that serve the people who are working in the offices. That's fine for 10 hours, 12 hours of the day, 5 days of the week, but that means that for more than half of the week is dead space. That's not living space. That's not anywhere anyone wants to go and stay and spend time. And you've been places where you feel comfortable. They're interesting, they're diverse, they're a little quirky. Yeah, they're not over-designed. Yeah? And they're places where you don't like being because they're desolate. Yeah? No, and you can have a beautiful building, but if it doesn't have a purpose for more than 8 hours a day, it's, for the fishes, sorry to say.
Okay.
Yeah? So I don't think the challenge really changed. And do I think the cities will die? No. Because people are urban people. You go back 2,000 years, everyone went to the market, the agora. Yeah, and we do it now. And you're right. And we hated being at home. Yeah? Who enjoyed being locked at home and locked out of their office? Well, not many people. Yeah? I was lucky. We never shut our office. So I could go into the office every day. Yeah? We didn't have to, so we didn't. No? Do I think that work practices will change? Yes. Does that mean the offices are dead? No, 400% no, because you can't manage a company if you never get the people together. So people need an identification. They need a feeling. And it's not just about a company office, it's about what location are you putting them in. And cities, no, I don't think they're dead in any way, shape or form.
Okay, good. And from your point of view, are you seeing more of a focus on sort of B, C locations, or is the focus more on creating more kind of urban quarters within the larger cities? Where's the focus at the moment for you?
Well, I think it's both. It's on the one hand side really creating these places where you, just as you mentioned, where you really want to live and where you want to spend your time, regardless of what type of work you're doing. And on the other hand side, of course, especially in Germany, B and C cities, they have a very special role because in Germany we are so distracted that there's not these 5 huge cities like maybe when you're looking at London or at Paris, where you can say Paris is responsible for, I think, 30% of the economic income, whilst Berlin is maybe 3 to 4% at all. So I think Germany is a little bit special. And the interesting thing maybe is that, whilst I would not say that there's anything positive about COVID, but I think the situation COVID brought us in really allowed us to get a little bit more open for thinking about what is important for life. Because what we see, and I found this very interesting when you say your company average age is 30 years. Of course,
I was trying not to take that personally, I have to say,
Because I remember when one of my former CEOs, we had one of these career days, and we were so sure that if we offer people just more money, you get your nice company car, and that people would just be so amazed by this fancy office and the opportunity to work there for, let's say, 12 hours a day. And the reaction was like, no, we want to have some sort of work-life balance. We want to be allowed to work from home. We do not even necessarily need a car because we do not have a driver's license. And my CEO was like, well, I really miss the good old days when your ultimate goal was to get into one of these corner offices and just become a C-level whatever in this company. And the young people, they were just, it's not that they were not interested, but they were clear that there are more things in life than just being able to buy the newest Mercedes every second year. And I think COVID really allowed us to accept that the mindset and the values of the new generation have changed, and we need to adapt that, because even my generation was growing up in a situation where I think building wealth was one of the most important things. I mean, being a German coming from a history of 2 world wars, we really destroyed more or less everything we could, and building up was really what was the motto for the day for years, for decades. And now we see the first generation that is free-minded and that recognizes that also wealth will not save you from like climate risks or COVID or whatever. So this generation is very clear what they want, and that is not spending hours and hours in an office building that does not give you anything but just being an office building.
And that's a really interesting point, I think, about that generational difference and the change there. And looking across the markets where you are, Leonard, so, I mean, you mentioned that you were focusing on kind of the bigger, more gateway kind of cities. But are you seeing a difference between, let's say, the ones you're focused on in Germany, but also the other major European cities? Is there a big difference, or do you think that actually the trends are the same for them?
Well, I mean, first of all, we did also invest in the past in other cities in Germany. Now, with our new strategy relaunch, we now focus solely in Germany on Berlin and Munich, and we think those are really great cities that will come out of the crisis and be even stronger because people really want to enjoy the city, and those, especially those cities, they offer a lot, really a lot that gives you reason to come back to the cities.
So can I just drill down a little bit into that? So what are the key elements of that for you? So livability, obviously, is it to do with, you know, the types of housing that's available, the types of jobs that are available? What was it made you decide on those two cities rather than, say, Frankfurt or, you know, some of the others? What was the driver?
Yeah, I think there are some key drivers, and I think Germany is special, but I also think that, you know, Germany will focus in the future more on these hubs, and there will be hubs that will be super interesting for young people, and then there will be other cities that worked in the past very well and might have some troubles in the future because they're just not as attractive. And when people get the choice to decide where you want to work, where you want to live, then this freedom also means that, you know, you don't necessarily have to go to a place where you just went for work back in the days, and now you are free to decide and you can go to a great place. So I think great places will get even better, and I think what makes a great city in the end for us, it's a lot about economy and innovation, obviously, because if you're young, if you're coming out of uni, you really want to step on the gas pedal of your career, and you want to be somewhere where innovation takes place and where you can achieve something in a very short time frame without a lot of hierarchies. And I think those cities that offer a lot of innovation, and especially Berlin and Munich, I think are tech hubs, are, you know, very innovative boom towns. It has a lot to do with life quality, obviously. If you are in Berlin, everyone knows the Berlin weekends and you know, the Berlin culture, and you know, everywhere is some pop-up store and people dance outside in the streets. You know, it's very diverse, it's very creative, and you know, offers a lot of problems as well. I think it has everything. The city in Munich, it's close to the Alps, it's more traditional, but you know, it has also a lot of life quality, and I think that is important. And for us, investing in those cities, obviously the ESG angle is a very important one, because you have these big corporates, like in Munich, you know, we have a lot of DAX companies that have their headquarters there, and those companies are driving the ESG agenda. Those companies do set themselves targets, and we try to help them and their suppliers and all the companies over there to achieve their targets. And then you have the startups, the young companies that have the young guys from the uni, and they come to the workplace, and I experienced that myself as well. When you have interviews, the questions are not that much anymore around like what's my clear career path and what's the salary and do I get my car, and if I get the step further, do I get a better car, and can I exchange my 3-year-old car because, you know, I need the new car. It's more about guys, what are you doing in ESG? What are you offering as a flexible work place? So can I go to the gym at 3:00 p.m.? Is it a problem if, you know, I'm working X hours a week, but I can freely decide when and how? And I think all those questions, and really critical questions, are being asked nowadays, and you as an employee have to respond to that. And I think it's easier for an employer to respond in the cities I described, because they also, in addition to your workplace, offer a lot of amenities for the people that work with you. And I think that stayed or used to be like that will stay. And we see similar trends also in London and Paris, where we also want to invest now.
Okay, good. And Richard, obviously the tendency in the larger cities, if I look at the experience I have in London, but also the other cities that I've visited, is an even larger increased focus on delivery times for e-commerce. The amount of e-commerce space that is going to be required in there to be able to deliver that is higher. But how do you do? So it's obviously a key part, I would say, of a winning city is to be able to deliver what people want within that. But what role do you see logistics taking in that? And do you think the cities have caught up with the idea that they really need to have logistics in their cities to make it a winning city?
Well, there have always been logistics in cities. They're just called shops. Yeah. The difference was that the customer went and picked up the stuff themselves. It wasn't delivered to where they are. So it's not that there's not sufficient space in the cities for that activity, because it was there anyway. It just needs to be repurposed, rethought, redesigned. If you look at the millennials who are interested in their work-life balance and their ESG and all of this stuff, why do they care if something turns up in an hour or next day? I mean, if it's fresh food, I understand, yeah? If it's the next widget from Amazon, who cares? I mean, if you really believe in ESG, why are you insisting on 1 hour delivery, which is clearly less sustainable than 1 day or 2 day delivery? I mean, we're all hypocrites, yeah?
So do you think there'll be a change, though? Do you think that actually it's that people aren't thinking about that and that actually there will be a change? Or if people can get it in the next 10 minutes, they'll go, actually, I'll have it in the next 10 minutes?
If you offer them it in the next 10 minutes, they'll take it in the next 10 minutes. If you tell them it costs you twice as much to get it in the next 10 minutes, but you could have it at a different price in a day, then people will probably start changing.
Right, okay.
But at the moment, your Amazon Prime costs you whatever, €10 a month. So you're paying it anyway, so I may as well get it straight away.
I think, you're absolutely right. I think the new generation, if you want so, they are caring, but, there needs to be a lot of education taking place still, and maybe there needs to be a fair pricing for some kind of products and services. So that definitely needs to take place.
Okay, good. And go ahead.
But maybe the thing is that when you're looking at the big cities, I'm fully with you. I mean, is there a need for same-day delivery, whatever? If you would ask me, sometimes yes, if you miss a birthday, things like that. But it's even more important when you're not living in one of these cities where you already have these shops and you can just walk out the door and you have your 15-minute city whatever and you are there and you can buy whatever you need. I think the more important thing is that we now facing a situation where even when you live somewhere very, very far off a city, you still get the same access to goods that in the former days only someone had who was living within a city, which again makes these cities much more attractive.
And do you think, just thinking about obviously one of the issues that there's been, partly because of e-commerce, but also a gradual trend away from physical retail, and then you've got city centres or neighbourhoods where the retail is no longer really properly functioning. What's the solution to that? Is that residential? Is it mixed use where you've got some logistics element of it along with the retail? Is it a mix of... what's your sense of that, Anne, in terms of that? And then I'll come to you as well then on that.
Yeah, I think it's really the mixture. I mean, when we are looking at city quarters, we are always looking, is there enough offer for things like you need on a kind of daily basis, like the typical daily goods? Is there a need for fancy stuff you can shop on Amazon on a daily basis? Surely not. So having this opportunity on the one hand side for a city quarter is quite nice, but not necessarily the fact that it needs to be there to make it a valuable place or even a winning city or whatever. So I really feel the people are coming back to the point where they are focusing a little bit more on whether or not they need something right away available, just as you mentioned. I think they are a little bit more focusing on regional products where they want to have direct access to, that makes sense to them. They do not need direct access to products that have been produced somewhere in China. So I think there is always the kind of level of comfort you want to have, which offers you logistics, right? And the fact that you want to have a certain kind of quality of goods, which then again comes to the point that you want to have something that you really can feel and take a look at and have this shopping experience that we were lacking all the last months.
Okay, good. And Richard, you wanted to...
Yeah, I think it's about diversity. So, I mean, if you can look at the UK high street, every UK high street 5 years ago was almost identical. You had the same shops. It's the same in shopping centres. You have the same shops. You have the same restaurants. If I go to Belgrade, it's the same as if I'm in Bucharest or Budapest or Prague or where they're all the same. That's boring. What's fun is having the interesting local shops. And so like my daughter, she doesn't buy any new clothes. She buys all her clothes secondhand. She's 20. That's the way she thinks, that's the way she sees the world. No, and I think that as people we have to cherish our locations, our localities, and that's one of the things that we learned about COVID. I actually really miss the cafe down the road. I really miss, a Starbucks is a Starbucks, but the local guy doing it for himself and his family or her family. That's what we need to care about, and that's, I think, what cities also need to cater for, not just the big chains, but also the idiosyncratic, small local.
And that's probably a good point if you were talking about winning cities, because whenever people identify with the place where they live, they will not leave it as long as they like it. So if you can really get people to a point where they say, well, this is my local coffee guy and this is my local whatever, and I love to be there, and I'm telling the guys in the office, look where I live, there's this and that is awesome. That really helps you to create a place that has a certain value for both people and then also for economic.
Okay, good. And how big, I mean, we've mentioned a little bit there around ESG, but how important is that, I suppose, both from a perspective of, I mean, you mentioned there a little bit that ESG and sustainability was a key element for that generation. But is that also vital to be a winning city, that actually there's going to be competition around which is the greenest city, which is the first one to move to all electric vehicles, or which is the first one to have no vehicles at all? Or, do you think there'll be competition around that as a key differentiation point for cities?
Well, I can only assume. I would say yes, but I think it's it depends on where the city wants to go. But I generally would answer as a yes, and I would say so for the companies we work with and the companies we experience in a daily business. Like a couple of years ago, I think the questions around ESG and what do you deliver as a building, and which amenities, and which not only E but also S, what's around. I think that was very rather easy to answer. Nowadays, it's a big topic, and I think it's in the forefront of what's defining if a space is being leased or not. And I think for companies, that's also a key differentiator to show your employees you really care if the office they work in does care and does offer the ESG compliancy. And I talked to a lawyer the other day, and he told me, like, for us as a lawyer, as a law firm, it's very difficult to differentiate ourselves in terms of ESG, because what we're doing is to consult people. So what could you do particularly green other than avoiding paper? So he said the choice of the building they work in, that's one of the crucial points for them to define and to show that they care about ESG and all that is connected with it.
That's interesting. And from your point of view, when you're looking at the sort of urban quarters side, Does that mean going forward there'll be more regeneration of existing buildings than demolish and build something shiny and new? Is that going to be, I mean, just picking up the point there from Richard around that character in some ways is a key part of it. Do you think there's going to be more of a drive for that generally?
Well, I think it gets back to the point that you want to create a place that people can identify with. And you will not create a place you can identify with when you're just breaking something down and building one of these new shining city quarters or office towers that you will find more or less everywhere else. So yes, the important thing is really to find a good mixture between the historic buildings, what you can re-establish maybe that has been there for a while, how you can improve businesses that have been there and are maybe now suffering, and really to be able to find a good mixture and not being a kind of strange animal getting into a place where you necessarily do not really fit into.
Okay, good. There's around I think it's about 9 minutes left. So if anybody's got a question, let me know, or a comment. I will come to you. Just raise your hand or shout or whatever is the most appropriate. And the same is true on the live stream as well. If you've got a question, do feel free to add that in. And thank you for the comments that have come in already. So I suppose, looking at cities, what do we think are going to, what are going to emerge as the successful cities, the winning cities? Do you think it's only going to be, you're making a play on the major cities, but does anybody also see smaller cities having a success as well? Is there a mixture of different investment opportunities here? Not for you, obviously.
No, but I think just to, that was our choice. I think there are so many beautiful cities out there. I'm living right next to, or I used to be raised right next to Regensburg. I mean, this is a super beautiful city. And if I had the choice, as coming out of uni, if there was a great company, obviously life quality there's perfect. So there are other cities as well. And it's just not what we find as our core strategy, but definitely, I would say definitely. But I'm the wrong person to ask, probably.
So I need to get the mayor of Regensburg on next time. That's obviously the one.
No, we still have one property in Regensburg. It's a nice one, but it's not our strategy. But still, I think Germany offers beautiful places.
Smaller cities, as much opportunity as bigger cities to be able to create product and investors that would be interested?
Generally, yes. I think the crucial point is always that I would say investor capital follows human capital. So looking at a city like Regensburg, where you have such a great university, of course, this is an awesome example for a, let's say, smaller city that really has high potential. There might be some of the smaller cities in Germany that are really too small to become worth thinking about whether or not it makes sense investing there. But even when we are seeing B and C cities and when we are seeing where the appetite also of the universities is, some of them really decide that they want to be somewhere on the green field, not in the center of a very crowded city, to allow their students to have a really good study-life balance already while they are there and studying. So we see that shift from a generation perspective, that the value of work or whatever plus life balance is growing. And if we are looking at examples like maybe the big IT players in the US that are doing exactly this, they are going to the green field and building a campus where people used to live and work and have their football courts or whatever they want to have there for their daily life, so they do not even have to leave this little microcosm any time again. That is something where we really could pick up, and whenever we see this good combination between education and also the willingness of the local politics, we see that economic is resilient, and we see that this is a quite good place to invest in, no matter how big the city is.
Okay, good. From your point of view, Richard, I mean, you'll be investing in, big box logistics, but also you mentioned their mixed use, as well as smaller urban centres. And is that gradually making its way across to all of the smaller cities as well? What's your sense of that?
Yeah, of course, people need services. Just because it's a small city doesn't mean that people don't have the same ambitions as people in a big city. I think it's different if you're an investor who's looking for an exit, then you're looking for liquidity. And if you're looking for liquidity, then you want to be in a bigger market because it's easier to attract people to invest with me and easier to offer them or more clearer to offer the potential of an exit. That's a lot more difficult in a secondary city or a tertiary city. But there are sources of capital to maintain, grow, develop those cities as well. But they're local. Yeah, they don't need to be so big because the cities are smaller. The investment amount is smaller. Yeah. So, but
Okay, good. So we've got about 4 minutes left. So that means we've each got about a minute to say where would we, because we haven't got, we would obviously all have invested in Scandicci. Was Sandro here? But we'll have to park that money for a moment and decide where we invest out of all of our, in terms of winning cities. Where do we think we should invest? You can either choose a strategy or you can choose an actual city if you wish. It's entirely up to you. So let's start with you, Richard. So where would you invest in terms of this winning cities side? What ticks the boxes for you?
Yeah, we're entrepreneurs, so you should go against the cycle, yeah? So you invest in the cities that are not looking so good at the moment but still have good fundamentals. That's where you make the really nice money. You don't make money investing in the nice shiny cities. Oh, you make money, you just don't make as much. Yeah? Make much more money in going against the cycle. And there's loads of opportunities everywhere. Thousands of people here at EXPO. We're all in their real estate business. Now, the winning cities are the ones that have a coherent plan for how to make interesting spaces for people to live and work. Because they will succeed. Because they will attract people to live and they will attract companies to provide workspaces. That will then attract more people to live. So it's really about having really smart planning, creating interesting, diverse spaces that provide all the services that people need. Ideally that you can walk to or you can cycle to. You don't need a car. You have an e-bike. E-bikes are fantastic. You can get, 20 kilometers is a good commuting distance and you stay fit.
So we should invest in those cities and e-bikes by the sounds of it, which is good. Anne?
Well, I would also go for the e-bikes. But I think for us, especially looking at Germany, where we have a much more diversified variety of even smaller cities, what would check the box for us is always the availability and the access to education on several levels, not only universities, plus affordable housing, where we could really see, okay, it is from the living perspective, it makes it worse to move there. And just as Richard said, it's attracting people not only for business but also for life.
Okay, great.
I can probably only repeat what was already said. I think everything I would pretty much confirm. I think we are in the shining cities, so we do think there is some euros to be made as well. But on the other hand, we find them especially attractive because we also follow talent, and that's something you said. I think wherever you find the best talent, the best workforce of the future, you will have the demand for new workplaces, innovative workplaces, and you will find an ESG very conscious crowd there. And we also see a run for quality. So I think in the future it's less offering some space; it's always offering a special place, a place that offers you more than just your desktop and your notebook to be placed at. And what we also believe in is that there's a lot of work to do in terms of existing building stock. So we also don't believe in building the city now newly, but looking at what is there and really trying to upgrade what is there in order to meet all the new regulation. And as I said before, our Alte Post building, it's a listed one. It used to be vacant for 10 years. Now it's there again. The floor plates are not perfect, but that used to be a problem, and now it seems to be the best thing that could happen, because people are like, wow, okay, I would never have expected this coming from other places that looked like 10 other places as well.
So that really does, that reusing a building and bringing it back to life makes a real difference.
Well, I absolutely would think so, and I think the whole discussion around ESG and emissions, it needs to be broadened, and it needs to take into account what used to be emitted, and the whole newly built thing doesn't start with when the first tenant goes into a building. It starts way before, and we need to take that into account. So our strong opinion is to use what is there and to upgrade it and to prolong the life cycle of such buildings.
Great, thank you, Leonard. Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Richard. Really good to get the perspectives of Coros and CTP and of course Core Estate as well. It's a discussion that we will pick up a little bit in the next session, which is on in Germany. So we'll be looking at all the sectors in Germany. So a briefing around that. I'll pick up Regensburg within that and see what the view of the panel is for certain. Thanks very much for joining us, and you could join me in thanking yourselves for being here and the panel. That would be great. Thanks very much. Thank you, guys.